Well, again, thanks for having me here. In some cases, I may be the first trans person you've ever known. I mean, there are chances that you've met a trans person, but you don't know it. Back in the turn of the 80s and 90s, only 1 in 30 knew anybody that was gay. Today, in the industrialized world, everybody knows somebody that's gay, but only 1 in 30 might have known somebody that's transgender. That's because even though we've been around since the time of Cleopatra, uh, we've kind of lived in the proverbial closet, and so I knew when that I was trans at the age of 4.5. It started, and the gender differences that I learned started early on. I wanted to be a witch for Halloween, and automatically the family said, "No, girls are witches, not boys." And so, without knowing it, there's the first definition: boys do this and girls do that. Then I would sneak into my sister's clothing and put it on and say to myself, as if I knew it was yesterday, this is what I should be wearing. This feels comfortable. Why am I wearing that stuff when I'm really comfortable in this? And my sister caught me, she spanked me, and she said, don't do that. Those are girls' clothes, not boy clothes. I think she spanked me for going into her clothes more than who I was. But early on, I started to know that I was different in my own mind. That you boy, girl, I don't know. I just knew that I, maybe I was being doing a lot of boy stuff, and that I wanted to play with the girls as much as I wanted to play with the boys. But I put it away. I had four strong faith foundations through my life. I started out Catholic, and there were 26 Mannings in two streets. So my Nana was the matriarch, and you went to church no matter what, or you got the wrath of Nana. And so we went to St. Agatha's in Milton, and every Manning went. Uh, so I learned the even at a young age the importance of going to church. Even though the church was full of structure, that was okay too. Then my family moved away to Braintree, and we went to St. Francis. And at 8 years old, I asked my parents if I could leave the church because I wanted to know God more. For some reason, God was really strong in me, but I'm only 8 years old. But the masses were in Latin and I didn't understand them. So I wanted to go to a church where I could understand. So they said yes, much to the consternation of the rest of the Manning. And I went to a church where my friend went, which happened to be Universalist Unitarian, not knowing that it wasn't a Christ base because I'm still only 8 years old. But what I learned there was the hippie movement, late 60s, love, 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 love everyone, love your neighbor. So that was pretty cool. That was awesome. And I just fell in love with people. And then at the age of 11, they started doing some things that didn't tend to agree with me. So I asked my parents again, who had followed me to the Unitarian church, that I want to move again. And I went to the Baptist church down the end of my street where I went to vacation Bible school and had so many wonderful friends. And it was in my neighborhood. And with the Baptist tradition, I learned scripture. I mean, they pound it into you. So we memorized verses. And again, it was awesome. So it wasn't until I got married at the age of 24 that we moved to the north side of Boston, and I joined a United Church of Christ after searching so many different churches. And this is what I learned from the four denominations: from Catholicism, the importance of going to church and structure; from Unitarian, love everybody; from Baptist, scripture; and then from United Church of Christ, um, social justice, putting it all together and making sense of everything and taking on what I wanted to do. But at 8 years old, again, you want to do all the boy things. I joined Cub Scouts. And this time my family acquiesced and they allowed me to wear my sister's one piece lilac bathing suit with built in bra cups I stuffed with socks. I put on a sash for the Halloween parade that was going to be in the auditorium for the Cub Scouts. And I paraded around the auditorium. I'm waving and everybody's applauding and so thrilled. And then I went home and I cried because in my mind I was thinking, if they only knew, this is what I should be wearing. If they only knew. And that's also at 8 years old, I realized I could only be authentic one day a year, Halloween. And that was going to be my secret. And I was going to put that away for the rest of my life. In junior high, I kept thinking this would go away. Never went away. In junior high, I became a good track star. I never got less than third place. I was fast. But when I went around the track, they were the cheerleaders, and I cried. I wanted to be a cheerleader. I knew all the moves, I knew all the chants, but boys aren't cheerleaders, girls are cheerleaders. Put that all away. Hide it, hide it, hide it. I didn't know what transgender was. I didn't know anything. No answers. I couldn't tell God. I couldn't tell my parents. Barely knew what gay or lesbian was at the time. Never mind transgender. That was so you resolve to live the lie for the rest of your life, even if you do not understand who you are. Now I watch a show called Medical Center on September 11th in 1975 when I was 15 years old. And it was a two-part series. And the head neurologist said that he was a woman and needed surgery and wanted to be a woman. And the whole first episode, they were saying, no, you can't do that. You'll lose everything you have. But my parents are sitting behind me, and I'm on the couch watching this. And for the first time in my life, I went, that's it. That's it. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. This is, wow, wow. So, but I couldn't say anything. Can't say anything to my parents. I mean, there's no definition. I was raised in a Leave It to Beaver household. June, more like Archie and Edith from All in the Family, but my siblings, I had a great family. Okay, there was no nature versus nurturing. My dad was a carpenter's carpenter and taught us everything. Yes, I'm son of Joseph the carpenter, so that's a different story. But anyways, life was good. But they said stay tuned till next week to see what happens. I was amazed. I ran up to my room. I couldn't let my parents see the joy in my, like, I'm not alone. So I couldn't wait till the next episode the next week. And there they decide that they're going to do this surgery. And trust me, now I know surgery is not what makes you who you are. Back then they thought it did. And Robert Reed, the father of the Brady Bunch, was the neurologist. And they acquiesced and they gave him the surgery, but they made sure that he left the back of the hospital because the camera crews are out front to see the freak of the week. So you see this woman who used to dress as a man, who is now Roberta, turn and get in the cab and wave goodbye. Oh, what an awakening. But I ran up to my bedroom and again cried my eyes out because that was Hollywood and I lived in Braintree, Massachusetts. No one would understand and never would anybody understand what I'm going through. At the same time, I am well versed in the Baptist Church on Scripture. So I'm actually spreading the word, doing spreading the gospel, but spreading the message that if you're homosexual or if you're gay, you're an aberration and you're born to God and you're a sinner and what a hypocrite. Here I am following the Baptist tradition, doing what I need for them to do to minister to the community, and with this secret of mine, and it just didn't sit right. But what am I going to do? This person sitting in Massachusetts. So I resolved to put it away, and put it away I did, and I did everything that you're supposed to do. The pastor had asked me if I wanted to be a minister at the time, even though I was in high school in the Baptist church. Said you should think of seminary, but I said no. I got married. I got a job at Raytheon where I worked on the Patriot missile system for the next 38 years. Explored different churches, explored churches on the north side of Boston. A pastor said in the UCC church that I should become a minister based on my, I have a bunny here. Get, go. And so I didn't accept going into the ministry then. I'd already just had two daughters that were wonderful. I had a job. The church loved me. And then at 40 years old, when this closeted stuff would not go away, I went to the International Foundation for Gender Education in Waltham, which I was so fortunate to have one there. And a trans woman met me at the door, and I was in tears. And I said, I have a story to tell you. And she said, come on in, sit down. I'll tell you your story. And I thought, whoa, that's awful brave of her. But she sat down and she basically recounted my whole story because it was her story. Now, you have to understand that I can only speak for one transgender person, myself. I can't speak for anybody else's traditions. I can't speak for blacks. I can't speak for a trans male. But I can tell you in the trans community, our walks are very, very similar, and how we're treated is also very similar. And she walked me through my life. And as I was leaving, she said, I want to give you a word of warning. You're probably 40 years old now, which I was. She said, by the time you're 50, if you don't deal with this, it will consume you or kill you. So those words were secretly put in my heart, and I did put it away. And at 49 years old, I had that dream I told you about. I was big into astronomy. I knew everything about the planets, still do, but God knew I knew about creation. God lifted that rock off me and said, I know your secret and I love you. And that's when I came out. My wife, we had gone to counseling. I had told her what I was feeling, and she didn't want any part of it. So we went to counseling, and back then the counselor told her that she's correct and I'm wrong. So that didn't sit well with our relationship, and she eventually asked for a divorce. And I was involved. My best friend was an organist at the church I went to, and she had two sons. It was my daughter, her son, my daughter, her son. And she taught organ, and I was a deacon, and I was chairman of the board. And I said, I'm going to transition. My ex-wife said, Steve, this woman would take me in lieu of rent. I'll fix things in your house. And she did. She told her sons that Mr. Manning's going to be Ms. Manning. Can you come and let her transition with us? And they welcomed me with open arms. And so did Serena, my best friend, who has now become my wife. I am the luckiest person on the planet. And so life was starting to be, pretty good. But in 2010, 5 months after I had moved in and put on part of a new roof and worked out the living room, kitchen floor, bathroom, her son came home and accidentally burned the house to the ground. And so we lost everything. He went into the Air Force. It was an accident. But at 2010, here I am trying to transition, getting a divorce, and a house burned down, not knowing what the relationship with my current wife would continue, because you fear everything. And I'm asking God, why? Why? My relationship was so good with God that I could be joyful with God, I could be pissed at God, I could fight with God, I could celebrate with God. So our relationship was good enough that prayer was conversational, and God usually won every argument, trust me. But I didn't know what was going on. And I had three conditions. I was going to stay in my church, stay in my community, and stay in my job. Well, Raytheon caught wind of my transition when I told them I was going to transition, and they originally said, we're going to fire you. For having a conversation like this with a coworker, you're suspended without pay. Leave and don't call us, we'll call you. So I was terrified that I might have lost my job. And a week later, they called me back and they said, we can't fire you. This is not within our purview, but we don't know about this. So just sit down and shut up. And so the head of HR worked there for another 5 years, and he called me into his office and he said, I don't care what they say. If you come out under my watch, I will find a way to fire you. So I lived under a gag order for 5 years until he retired. After he retired, everything in Raytheon changed. They got employee resource groups, and one of them was LGBTQ. And at that point, I went down to HR and says, I really need to transition. And it took a year and a half for them to allow me to do that, because they had to call corporate headquarters in Virginia, and everybody had all hands meetings on what it meant to talk to a trans person and what it is to be trans. from Virginia down to the supervisors, down to the managers, down to the general, and they all had all hands meetings that Renee is going to transition, and this is how you need to talk to a trans person. So I went away for a week. I came back terrified, but wearing a white or an ivory dress, and walked into the building, walked to my cubicle, and nobody would get near me because my colleagues were terrified that they might do the wrong thing. I went down to the cafeteria at lunch to get my sandwich, and there was 150 people in the cafeteria, loud as can be, because it was a multi-tiered building with different businesses in there, and they're all eating. And when I walked through the door, it went instantly quiet, and everybody turned. So I gave a queen wave, went and got my sandwich, and went back to my cubicle. And for the next month, people passed by my cubicle that I'd never seen before. They wanted to see the freak of the week. They wanted to see who this person was. So you learn to like suck it up and just do my job that I loved. And now I'm doing it in a dress. So personally, I'm thrilled. The church worked real hard to keep me. They worked real hard, but we had some issues, and I eventually had to leave the church. I did stay in the community until I left because of the fire. And again, why? Why is all of this happening to me? And I have to let you all know that when a person transitions, it's one of the most exciting times for a trans person. It is also one of the most scary times. Because don't forget, I had 50 years of male teaching. My gait was wrong, my voice is wrong, my walk, my talk, my everything is wrong. I don't know about girls' clothes. What sizes are what? So you reach out to your girlfriends and you hope that they'll help you out with the right how to do this. And they did, but you still do things wrong. And one of my first outings in dress in my town, I felt like I was giving this aura out that I was different. And I learned that in spades when I walked into Market Basket to do some grocery shopping. The manager ran to his office, grabbed a walkie-talkie and said, "Managers, man your position, it's in the building." And they all went to a different aisle, and I could hear, "It's in aisle 1, it's coming to aisle 2, it's in aisle 3. And I could hear that, and it hurts. And I wanted to just go to the front and say, "Hey, take a look. Here I am. Is that going to satisfy you?" Then we went to a home show because the house had burned down and we need to look at what we needed to maybe rebuild a new house. And I would talk to a vendor and they would give me information about what they're selling. But when I went to the next cubicle, they would crack up laughing. And I listened to that laughter, cubicle after cubicle after cubicle, till I got to the end of the row and a guy ran over and grabbed me by the shoulder and say, "Honey, look, a real he, she." So, again, yeah, how am I going to traverse this world when people are acting the way they did? I went on the road for 10 years for Raytheon, putting in TSA equipment in every airport in the country. I would go to an airport, measure their space up, design their TSA equipment that they needed, go before the board and the head of the airport, lay out the blueprints, and have a 2-hour meeting with my colleague. And everything went well in all 83 airports I went to over a 10-year period. But when I left that meeting, they would go to my colleague and say, "Why did Raytheon not warn us that something like that was coming? Why didn't they give us a heads up?" And my colleague would always say, "Did you get what you needed? Did she give you what you need?" They said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, that's what you paid for." And he took the brunt of the people that were, against me. And God loved the allies, because an ally is the person that defends me when I'm not in the room. And Steve did a yeoman's job on that year after the year. But when I found out what was happening, that wasn't fair to him. We finally came off the road. God brought us to Andover, where I joined South Church. There, the pastor said, "Renee, I think you should join the ministry." And at that point, third time's a charm, I couldn't say no. So I went to Gordon, yeah, right. I went, no, sorry about that, Sharon. I was looking at Gordon at one time, but they said they would take someone like me. I didn't have undergrad, so I had to prove that I was worthy of a master's. And they took me in, and everybody fell in love. It was a wonderful time. And now, while I'm a member in discernment, I went before the committee on formation, and they said, "Why did you wait so long to accept God's call?" And it was my epiphany then that of all the times I was asked to go into the ministry, I couldn't accept it until I was authentic. Otherwise, I'd be preaching a lie. I had to be the authentic person I needed to be. And that's when I said 10 years before, why? I tell you, God has a weird sense of humor. God finally said, and this is why. Because I need you to be my voice. I have a very narrow, although possibly scary ministry for you. Are you willing to accept it? And I said, yes. So I teach equality and acceptance everywhere I go. Do I get pushback? Yes. When I was down in Dallas, I had a nice dress on. I went into a beautiful little restaurant, sat there by myself, ordered my dinner, and four men got up from the table next door because they heard my voice and said, "You've got 2 minutes to leave this establishment." I said, "What?" They said, "You heard us." So I immediately got up and started to walk out, and I thought they'd sit down, but they followed me out. And there was my rental car in between two pickup trucks that they fanned out to with assault rifles in the back of their pickup trucks. And I said, "Dear God, I guess I'm coming home to see you sooner than I thought." Um, but by the grace of God, when I told you that scripture that angels watch over us, it's always that instance that I'm referring to. Um, they went back and sat down, and shaky, I went back to my hotel. And that's where I learned I have to be aware of where I am every second of the day. And the last little thing I'll tell you is last summer I was driving up to Maine. I was on the Maine Turnpike, and a truck immediately almost came up and rammed me. And I thought maybe because he's from Maine and I'm from Massachusetts, but I saw a lot of cars around me from Massachusetts. But then I realized I had a rainbow bumper sticker on the back of my car. And for the next 12 miles, he antagonized me by trying to cut me off, ran me, get in front of me, land on his brakes. I finally slowed down to 40 miles an hour, and for 10 miles, we played this cat and mouse game, and he passed my exit, and I took it quick, and I knew he couldn't double back. But I pulled into a parking lot and just shook for a little bit and realized, no matter where I'm at, if I claim that I'm different, I run the risk of my safety. So that's why I know in full, if I'm one trans person, I pass until I open my mouth. But I'll tell you, I've given you some like scary stories, but being trans is the best thing that ever happened to me. God gave me purpose. God gave me a beautiful wife, um, a beautiful life, a beautiful witness. My kids love me. Uh, I say I lost, but what I gained is so much more. And now I'm building a community of faith people. Not everyone accepts me, not everyone understands me, but in my little story here, if I gave you a little passion or empathy to what the trans community is going through, I'm not a martyr by any stretch of the imagination, but the kids are passing today and the kids are going through today. And if I can take the hits, I'll take them so it's easier for them. Now, trans is coming out. I'm 50 years alone, and now I have friends, and now I have community, and life is wonderful. And when people say that God only makes a binary, just male and female, or land and water, trust me, there's the beach and there's coral reefs. There's the transition people between land and day and night. There's sunrise and sunset, where we say that's a beautiful sunrise, beautiful. There is beauty in the transition, and I feel like I was born in that moment. So it's allowed me to see the beauty in others. And like I said, I don't ask for acceptance, but I ask you to see again, I'm not the one you fear. And I do ask you to have the conversations, these critical conversations, because now you've met me, maybe you can know that I'm not the one you should fear. And that when someone says, "Oh, transgender is against God," or "transgender, they're freaks," or "transgender are not normal," or "they're schizophrenic," you could say, "No, I've met somebody and they seem pretty even keel. They're my brother or my sister, and they're okay. We'll talk about gender nonconforming and gender non-binary another time. But I just wanted to introduce you to me and have you. I'd love being part of your faith community. So right now, all questions are on the table. What can you bring to me? Bring it on, Kobe. Bring it on.